Good afternoon to some of you, good morning to others. And I'm very, very excited about the session today because we have the wonderful Dr. Deniese Cox joining us from teachingonline.com.au. I'm just going to do a brief introduction to Denise, and then you have an amazing 75-minute action-packed session with Denise. And I'll be hanging around in the background to say hello in the chat if anyone needs anything. Otherwise, you can sit back and enjoy the experience with Denise, and I know she's going to engage you and do lots of really awesome things. Denise's journey into online education began well over a decade ago with the question, as an online trainer, how can I ensure my practice is truly effective? I think that's a wonderful question to begin a journey like this. Now, of course, Denise has a PhD in online education. She's done commissioned research projects for ASQA and for NCVER, and has research findings published in peer-reviewed journals and received the 2023 ODLAA Award for Vocational Education Research. And probably many of you know of Denise's work because she's very high. I think you are the highest rated presenter with VELG. So for any of you who get involved in VELG's professional development, you probably have seen some of Denise's sessions. And I just really love Denise's work because it's not just a bit of theory. It's really based in solid research. It's evidence-based, it's evidence-informed work. And really you can tell the countless hours that Denise puts into this really good, robust, solid research. So I think you're going to get a lot of value out of Denise's session today. And I'm very, very grateful to you, Denise, for coming along and sharing your wisdom with our incredible community of vet professionals. And on that note, I'm going to hand it over to you. Enjoy the session.
Thank you so much, Paul. I really, really appreciate that warm welcome. It is great to be here, and I love how many people are here this morning and this afternoon taking an interest in this really important topic. And you know what? I am so lucky. I am so lucky that I happen to have been able to carve out for myself the best job in the world. I get to spend half my time doing research. So like you said, that's real research with real trainers and real learners and real learning content, and looking at what works and what doesn't, not just for the learning outcomes, but also for the learning experience, and then also for the trainers as well. You know, anytime we do research and we come up with such a good, juicy strategy, if it destroys workload, we chuck it in the bin. We just don't go there. So, you know, I'm just so lucky that I get to spend so much time with trainers and learners. And then I spend the rest of my time transforming it into professional development so that we can all know what it is that today's adult learners need and want from us. So yay, I'm just so lucky and I love it. And I get to be here talking with hundreds of you today, which is kind of fun as well. It's not a bad way to spend a Wednesday. So I'm really excited how many people are here today who are interested in learning about the impact that our face, that our webcam has on not only the learning outcomes, but also that learning experience. Let's dive on in. So I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we all live and work every day, and pay respects to elders past and present. And I like to take this opportunity to remind ourselves that teaching and learning has been happening on these lands for thousands of years, and we are just continuing that tradition. And I really like just seeing it with that longevity, and that we're just on the same path as all those who have gone before us. This image here was created by a gorgeous Indigenous artist named Sarah Richards. And when I asked Sarah if I could license an image from her collection for my acknowledgement of country, I asked which image she would recommend. And she chose this one for me. Because she knows I talk to trainers all day, every day, she chose this one. It's called Pathway to Growth. And isn't that just the perfect fit for what we do here in teaching and learning? Because that path to learning, that path through learning, it doesn't have to be a straight line. And I think that's something we can all embrace. It's kind of gorgeous, isn't it? All right. Now, today, normally in a webinar, I say at this point, okay, it's okay to keep your cameras turned off. We are actually in a Zoom webinar, which means that it's turned your cameras off, and that's a good thing. So just one thing that's really interesting with our research, we've found that adult learners find it easier to stay engaged in a live session like this if their own camera is turned off. Isn't that interesting? So your cameras are off. It means that you can sneak that sneaky bicky, nobody's watching. You can relax and just really just sit with the content. I have done the note taking for you because I want you to sit back and relax with your coffee. I have done all the note taking for you. Paul is about to put today's notes, a PDF document. He's going to pop that in the chat for you right now. So we're here in Zoom. If you move your mouse, your tool tray comes up along the bottom. Click the chat icon. You'll see that white panel come up on the right hand side, and there is a PDF document sitting there waiting for you to download it. Those are your notes. All the slides you're going to see today are already in that PDF for you. So it just helps you relax. It means that you can then sort of expand on those notes because the basic note taking's been done for you. And those little circles in the bottom left-hand corner of my slides, those are the page numbers. So as we go through, that lets you know what page we're on. We are here in Zoom together, which means we have that chat function that I just mentioned. And I can see there's already hundreds of people have already said hello in that chat. And I love that as well. So thank you for that. That is your space. You are not interrupting me. I'm very lucky. I have 3 big screens on in front of me, and I keep the chat just there off to the side. So I can keep an eye on it, make sure I'm not missing questions, but it's not distracting me. So if you have a comment, if I'm saying something that really resonates, crazy, you're not just talking to me in that chat, you can also talk to each other. So feel free to have those discussions. It's not a distraction for me. We're also very lucky. Paul has set us up with the Q&A feature as well today. So you can pop questions in there. I will be pausing regularly to check in on those, and I've left us some time at the end for questions as well. But if you think of something, feel free to pop it in. Now, what's really interesting is lots of people hate using the chat, hate using the Q&A feature, because in sessions like this, adult learners, so trainers like us, but also our learners, get worried about the judgments that are made around their spelling and their grammar and things like that. So I want to make a deal with you right now. We are live online. We are typing quickly. Typing mistakes, typos are going to happen. So I would love everybody to give me a thumbs up or an I agree in that chat there to say, you know what? Sod the spelling mistakes. It genuinely doesn't matter. It's all about participating. Loving all those thumbs ups coming through. Thank you so much. So let's A, not judge each other, and 2, let's not let that worry us as well. There's another reason why people don't like using that chat, don't like using the Q&A as well, is again, it's around that judgment. I bet you've experienced this. You've been in a meeting or a session and you think, oh, I do have a question, but is it a silly question? Right? We've all experienced that. So when we provide opportunities for learners to be invisibly seen, to be anonymous, participation rates go through the roof. And so because I wanted you to get to experience that today, we're going to do a little bit of that today as well. So I use a very simple digital polling tool called Poll Everywhere. I have just popped the link in the chat box right now. So you are not downloading any apps. There are no usernames. There are no passwords. You're just visiting that website. If you've got your smartphone with you, you can scan the QR code. You can just type in that website, or even easier, just click the link that I just popped into the chat box right there as well. Okay. And I can see a few people are struggling with downloading that PDF document. We will be emailing it out afterwards, no problems. Okay, so when you get to this website, pollev.com, there's a word cloud that we're going to make together, and this is going to be super, super fun because there's nearly 300 people in this session right now. So 300 people on a word cloud, what could possibly go wrong? This is going to be great. So you're just visiting that website. I've popped it into the chat box. And as you get there, just one word answers. What are the characteristics of a great educator? Characteristics of a great educator. This is great. Loving all these answers coming in. If you don't want to use the digital polling tool, that's perfectly fine. The chat is right there. I'll be keeping an eye on that as well. Look at all these coming in. So the words that are entered most frequently get bigger, and the word engaging is currently winning the race. It's also, I can see it over there in the chat as well. This is great. Engaging, passionate. Love that word. That's a good one. Fun, flexible. Flexible's a good one, isn't it? Friendly, makes connections. Approachable. That's a great word. Engaging. Lots of variations of engaging, engaged, all that's in there. Knowledgeable, communicates, listens, lots of variations of listening there. But engaging is definitely winning the race. We've got supportive, we've got good communicator. Isn't this interesting? If you look at every one of these words here, they're very human characteristics, aren't they? Nobody has typed, thank goodness, that the characteristic of a great educator is that they're an IT whiz, that they're brilliant with technology. They look like a newsreader. Nobody's saying that. Everybody's just saying these very human traits. And I love that because we're talking here today about our webcam, and one of the things the webcam can do for us is allow these very human traits, these characteristics of a great educator. Our webcam can facilitate some of this stuff coming through. Isn't that brilliant? Thank you so much for jumping into that poll with me. We are going to actually be back visiting this polling tool again a little bit later. I will let you know when to come back here. So for now, just pop it away in the background. I will let you know when there is a new poll open for us. And I will just get things set up so it's ready for me when I'm ready. Okay, I'll let you know when to go back there. Don't go back there yet. All right. Everything you're hearing with me during this session is driven by research. And the reason I started investigating our learners' perceptions of how we use our webcam, well, it seems kind of obvious, doesn't it? We are using our cameras more than we ever have before as trainers. We're on camera during live sessions like this one. We're pre-recording video content. We're having meetings on camera. And a couple of years ago, I was leading quite a large research project investigating how learners engaged with video content. I was looking at why learners did or didn't click play on a video. And I looked at things like, well, okay, they might click play, but then they turn it off straight away, or they watch it all the way through. So I was looking at all those sorts of behaviors. Lots of really good insights came out of that work. But it was during the focus groups for that particular project that the learners said, and I've got to say they said it very passionately, that the nature of our camera feed is a really critical factor here. It's a very critical factor in their engagement, not just whether they'll play a video and watch a video, but also during these live lectures, their live webinars, their tutorials. Our camera feed matters. And it became such an important variable during that project that I actually had to carve it out and put it into its own dedicated year-long project. And so there were a few phases to this targeted project around camera feed. The first phase informs the second. That's how it normally works. So in the first one, we investigated, well, what camera feed formats are trainers using? What's going on out there? And then in the second phase, we developed learning materials to represent the three selected formats. So we identified there are three most commonly used webcam formats, and we redeveloped learning materials to reflect all three of those formats. So we could do direct comparisons between one format over another. We measured things like the learner's attention. So they self-reported that. We also were being creepy researchers and observing them learning as well. We did things like assimilation of knowledge. So that was evaluated when they were discussing content. We were monitoring learning outcomes. We tested retention through formal testing. The learners are the ones who decided that we needed to include credibility or belief in the content within our project as well. And I love it when learners are driving the things we should be measuring. And so we did that through surveys and interviews and focus groups. And I love that they said that this matters. This is something that matters to them. And then we also measured things like their willingness to take action, whether they would follow directions and things like that. And again, lots of analytics and things there. So all this happened across both live online sessions and pre-recorded video content. And what I loved about this project, I got to work with learners. The youngest was 18, our oldest was 68. And we had people from education and healthcare and trades. And it was such a good cross-section of learners. So much fun. So I'm going to share with you some key insights, so some key findings, and I'm going to share with you lots of practical tips, so things you could do right now today to elevate how well you come across for your learners. But before I give you all the answers, I want you to think about your own perceptions, your own experiences. So I'm now going to show you on screen the 3 different visual formats that were included in this study. So, and then I want you to think about which of these you performed best and why. You don't need to answer, you're just thinking to yourself, which one of these do you think performed best and why? So, this format here is the most commonly used format in live classes, and a lot of people are using this format for recorded videos as well. And of course, this is what we call the Zoom format, the Teams format. So these platforms, they're placing the camera feed sometimes up the top here, sometimes off to the side, sometimes at the bottom. But the key feature is you can see my face, and I'm in a frame that's separate from those slides. So thinking about your own experience, what do you think the positives and negatives may have been found with that format? Now, the next most commonly used format is this one. It's the voiceover only format. I'm no longer visible to you. It's now all about the slide. So if we were in a live class like we are right now, you would be sharing your screen. And PowerPoint does a great version of this as well. So regardless of whether it's live or pre-recorded, the key feature is you can hear the tone of pace of my voice, but you can't see my face. So what do you think may have been found with this format? And finally, we have this format. So many education sites and trainers have now set themselves up with this format, which does use green screen to make this happen. I'll explain all the hows and whys of this a bit later. The key feature here is you can see my facial expressions, you can see my torso, but the key feature is I'm in the same frame as those slides. So taking a moment to consider this format, how do you think it performed? So back to the polls. I'm going to pop the link back in the chat box there for you. A, B, or C, which one do you think performed best for learner experience and learner outcomes? You can also answer in the chat. Lots of people answering on the polls here. It's a bit of a giveaway, isn't it, given that this is the format that I come through on. It would be a bit weird right now if I said, no, it's not this format, it's the other one. But I wanted you to think about those formats. I wanted you to experience those formats. And of course, thank you for everyone in the chat and over here. You are, of course, it is format C, where the person is visible in the same frames as the slide. So let's look into why that is and the specific features there. Because it's one thing to say, well, this is the better format, but why? And what do we do about it? So across every single measure, the educator being in the same frame as the learning content, it performs best in terms of attention, retention, assimilation, engagement, you name it, head and shoulders above the rest, dare I say it. This is also the format that learners, when asked, say, yeah, we just like it better as well. So those quantitative measures, but also just the, yeah, we just like it better measure as well. Next is that Zoom format or that Teams format, so the educator is still visible. And of course, that voiceover only one, as you will see, does not perform well at all. It's a bit of a disaster. Let me explain why. I'm going to share with you some practical insights here, and then I'm going to devote a bunch of time to saying, well, yeah, green screen might be better, but I'm stuck with this one. How can I make it better? I'm going to spend loads of time on that for you. How can you actually make the format you've got better? But first, I really wanted to share some data. Don't worry, I'm not going to go all researcher on you and just live in data for the next hour. But this one picture is really worth unpacking. So the graph you're about to see has 3 measures. So I'm going to show you their active participation in tutorials, whether they watched videos, and whether they answered the questions correctly. And you're going to see it across the green screen, that Zoom or Teams format, and then the voiceover only. Are you ready to see the actual difference? All right, first bar, the blue one. That's showing us the difference in how active people are in live tutorials. So we're dealing here with adult learners. How active are they in a live tutorial? If the trainer looks like this. So up here, we've got 86% of learners engaging on average. Voiceover only, if you're just showing your slides and not your face, only 12% of learners are going to engage. Next, we have, do learners watch those learning content videos? So instructional content videos. As you can see, they love watching. They will watch all 3 of the videos. So, and we have little checks in there so we know whether they also watch them all the way through. So yeah, we're up here in the 90s percentages here, and nobody wants to watch those videos when it's voiceover only. And finally, this green bar shows us their learning outcomes. So did they actually learn anything? We're sitting at 97% here. 97% of people are passing the test, i.e. they learned the thing that was taught. Here, we're at 76%. Down here, we're at 38%. So only 38% of learners are actually passing the quiz when that instructional content is being presented in a voiceover only format. So in short, your face matters. Now, a year's worth of data is way more complex and nuanced than that, but this is actually a really, really good summary that shows you there are distinct gaps here. So we have to pay attention to our face. So this format, which as I'll explain later, does mean there is a green screen hanging on the wall behind me. Learners say it just feels easier to engage with. It feels more natural. Critically, they report feeling more connected with their trainer, right? And this sense of connectedness is really, really important. And what's interesting here is it's easier for the trainer to just be normal as well. It's easier to be conversational. It's easier to make eye contact. It's easier to have really natural body language as well. So that connection is really important. Critically, and this is something no other format can achieve, is learners perceive there's a really strong connection between the trainer and the content. And so this connection here is what's adding weight and substance and credibility to the content being shared. And it's almost like when you're at a party and instead of 2 people being in on the conversation, it's 3 people. And so this connection is strong and this connection is strong, which means this connection is stronger as well. So it's really critical and no other format can achieve it. Students spoke really positively about body language here, and I'll try not to get all self-conscious now because that's what I'll do, right? But it's really interesting that you can just convey a key point and things like that. And we saw with this format as well that learners are participating more actively in live sessions, and in self-paced content, they're more likely to follow instructions and things like that. Critically, the educator's torso is really, really critical here. If you have the same setup, but you're just showing the trainer's face and you're getting these weird little T-Rex fingers, it performs significantly less well. So you do need that body language. So it's not just about being here, it's about being here. And believe me, we tested every pixel you're seeing on screen here, exactly the size of the trainer, the ratio, everything, exactly how much overlap there should be. And this amount of torso was found to be perfect. What's interesting here is learners said things like, I feel seen when my educator's like this. Now I love that comment because they never were seen. Learners either had their cameras turned off, which is a rule we have in our research projects for this particular one, or they were watching a pre-recorded video. So the trainer could never ever see them, but they felt seen. Isn't that interesting? They felt that connection. They felt that being part of a conversation. Learners said things like, oh, I find myself leaning in. And again, we observed that happening when we were being creepy researchers watching learners learn. It's not weird, it's normal, everyone does it. No, when we were there watching learners learn, we would actually watch them pick up a pen and be nodding and making hand gestures and things like that when the video is presented in this format. And we didn't see that with the other formats. With the other formats, we'd see them almost turn away and be just, oh yeah, I'll just watch it out of the corner of my eye. Whereas with this format, they would actually sit square onto it. That was really interesting. So that eye contact and that natural body language is doing a lot of interesting things because learners' body language responds. They sit more square onto the computer. Onto the screen. And this is a thing we call social partnership because of this very natural conversational style that is facilitated when your camera looks like this. However, most trainers are using this format. And so this is the next best thing. So if this is what you've got, make it work for you. It's very commonly used in live sessions and pre-recorded videos. So of course we looked into this one. Learners said that they struggle with this one a little bit more because they're splitting their focus here. So they're saying it takes a little bit more effort. It's a not noticeable effort, but it does take more effort to am I looking at the face or am I looking at the slides? There's just that split focus. It's a little bit more fatiguing. And so we did find in our measures that the same learning content presented this way, learners did show more signs of fatigue, and also their attention was lower and things like that as well. The loss of the body language here is a really big drawback, obviously, so that's something else that's happening. However, when we experimented by putting the entire torso in the frame, it does not work. Quite badly, actually. Things get worse. So yeah, you're now getting body language, woo, great, but that's all you're getting now, right? You've lost those facial expressions, and those facial expressions are critical. So that's an interesting thing we learned as well. So while this is not as good as that previous format, it's better than the next one you're about to see. And as learners said, low tech is better than no tech. So, I mean, if this is what you've got access to, make it work. And I'm going to show you some tips for improving it shortly. All right, final format, the voiceover only format. It's very, very, very common. And guess what? Learners hate it. They struggle to pay attention. They are picking up their phones straight away. They are getting distracted. They struggle to learn anything. In fact, I can't even do that to you. I can't stay in that format for long because it just feels weird to me. And as somebody's picking up in the chat there, that the format that I'm showing you right now, it does feel more like a classroom. It feels familiar. It feels like a learning situation. This voiceover only format is so hard to stay paying attention. Learners really struggle with it. And it's why they weren't learning anything. And we tested it so much. Learners saying that they've got no connection with their trainer with this format. And they found then the content was less credible. So when they were being taught something that challenged a pre-existing idea or was a little bit challenging to learn, they really struggled to find that the content had any credibility. Now, out of 182 students, there was one who said, no, I like the voiceover only format because I struggle with faces and interpreting body language. Absolutely, we get that. This was a neurodiverse student. But in all of my research projects, I recruit at least 5% of learners to be neurodiverse, to identify as neurodiverse. And this study was no different. 5% of the learners in this study identified as neurodiverse. And they all stated their preference for the format you're seeing right now, except for one. And what I found it really interestingly, in those students didn't all know each other, right? But on days that they were saying that, I am feeling a bit cognitively overloaded today, those facial expressions, your body language, and can't be doing that today, they would just whack a post-it note on the screen. And I love that they were all doing it, even though they'd never seen anybody else do it. They were all doing it. And so they liked this format because, you know, they could anticipate where the trainer would be. They could anticipate what that would be like. And they could decide on that day, is today a post-it note day or not? Isn't that interesting? So there you have it. The research on this one was very, very clear. Learners' perceptions, their experiences, as well as those measurable learning outcomes favor this format where the educator is framed with the content. All right, so the practical realities is you need a green screen hanging on the wall behind you. There's a few other pieces of hardware. I'll share that with you a bit later. For those who are interested, I've left that to the end so that those who aren't interested can run away. So I'll do that towards the end. I'll explain what hardware do you need for this. There's a little piece of free software as well. There's also a little bit of a learning curve because you do need to learn how to set up and use the software. It's not hard, believe me, but there's a moment in time. It takes a day to set up and learn. And of course, you need to have the space for it. You need to have a space where you can have the green screen and some lights and a microphone and a camera. But hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trainers have set this up for themselves. There are campuses all over Australia who have set this up for themselves. And so I wrote a getting started technical guide. It's 100 pages long. It's been downloaded more than 1,500 times. I've received hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of video clips of trainers saying, oh my God, we did it, right? It's so easy to do, but it's not an option for everybody. So back to the polls. I have a question there waiting for you, and I can see some of you are in there already. Love that. Same website as we were at before. I'll pop the link in there for you. Back to the polls. Why don't trainers present like this? Why don't we do it? There he answer. This is not a trick question. Don't you love anonymity here? You can actually say what you really think. Loving some of the comments over here in the chat. Thank you so much for everyone being involved in the conversation. I'm not going to read them all out because there's so many. We'll be here all afternoon, but I really appreciate you being in there with those comments. Thank you, everyone. All right. Polling says, why do we think people don't do it? You can choose up to 2 answers. People are saying they don't have the equipment. Absolutely. People are saying, what's our next one winning? Okay, unaware of the difference it makes. And I think that's one of the reasons I was really excited that Paul wanted to, and Excelia wanted to host this webinar for you today so that you know, because and it's also why I demonstrated the differences for you, because it's one thing for me to send out a little PDF saying, by the way, show your face, but to let you experience it, that's the big difference, isn't it? So most people, we've got 39%, 40% saying, we just don't have the resources, the equipment, get that. Next winner is people just not knowing about the difference. And then next saying, we don't know how to do it. Some people saying they don't want to be on camera, they don't want to learn this, and that's fine too. We see that a lot. Lots of trainers going, oh, but I don't want to be on camera. Sorry, it's making a massive difference for your learners and their learning outcomes. Gotta say, these days, being on camera is kind of part of the gig. Thank you everyone for jumping into that poll. I will let you know when to jump back to that a little bit later. We've got another one there in about 10 minutes. All right, for now though, the reality is you've got to be using the equipment you have handy. So even if you're sitting there and you've just scribbled a big note on your whiteboard that says, buy a green screen, you're not going to have that this afternoon. So whether you're interested in that side of things or not, it doesn't matter, because right now, today, what are some things you can do to make the format that you are using better for your learners? So I have 5 really practical tips that will make an instant improvement, things you can do today. So the things our learners in focus groups they complain about most often, and they complain about most loudly, right? So very passionately, is poor lighting. That's the big thing that they're complaining about. They're also not impressed when the trainer isn't looking at the camera. So when the trainer's saying, oh, hi, welcome everyone, but my notes are over here. I'm not exaggerating. This is happening all over the country right as we speak. And learners are not impressed when the trainer doesn't frame themselves up properly, you know, and again, those are not exaggerations. I guarantee we could log into a class right now without any effort and we'd find somebody coming through like this. So that poor lighting, that lack of framing, the comments are kind of negative. Not only do learners perceive this is a negative experience, but they report that it's very disengaging. And of course, we observed those measurable learning outcomes were lower because learners say that they're saying, well, but the trainer has no credibility, no authority. They're not as professional, so why would I listen to them? So what can we do about this? A few tips for you. So first things first, make sure your camera is set up square onto your face. Right? Not over there, there. And so the best thing to do is say, because we all have multiple monitors these days, most of us do, say, well, what is the monitor where my notes are going to be, where my PowerPoint notes are going to be, or whatever it is my notes for this class are going to be. That monitor is where your camera is. And you want to mount your camera. Imagine that's your monitor. You want to pop your camera right there. So it's just skimming the top of your monitor. I'm not looking at the camera today. Right? I keep forgetting it's there. I'm looking at my speaker notes there in PowerPoint, but it looks like I'm looking at the camera. The other thing you want to do, and a neat trick that's helped lots and lots of trainers, people who are self-conscious to start out with, is actually put a photograph behind the camera. So if you've got a wall behind your camera, put a photo there of people to remind you that it's not about the camera, it's about the people on the other side of the camera. So just be conversational, just be yourself. Remember, there are people out there, forget about the camera. So that camera angle, that is the most important thing that you can fix right now, today. And please do. The second most important thing that you can fix today is your lighting. As you saw, facial expressions are critical. So yeah, body language is really important. Facial expressions are critical. Your facial expressions impact how you come across, how much learners trust you. Trust matters. And if you are a fuzzy, dark blob, nobody's trusting you. Nobody's going to trust what you're saying. Nobody's going to be following your learning plan. Nobody's going to be following your recommendations. It affects learning behavior. It affects learning outcomes. So low trust, they're not going to do the things you're asking of them. And we met some learners who are female learners who found they perceived that the male educator sitting in the dark talking to them felt kind of creepy, made them very uncomfortable, and they brought us screenshots and showed us examples of that. So that's something to pay attention to. But gender aside, learners don't trust the trainer sitting in the dark. So the one thing you can do is light up your face. You don't need to buy fancy studio lights. You just need to look around your room, look at your lighting, and look at where you're facing and things like that. What can you do to light up your face? Easy as that. I told you these were practical tips. Next tip you can do. Learners engage less with content if it is presented by a robot. They will engage more with content when it is presented by a real life human being. Funny that. So what does that mean? They want us to be natural. They want us to be conversational. They want us to just talk to them. Whether it's a video or a live session, doesn't matter. Just be conversational. Head up, making eye contact with them through that camera. Having really natural body language. If you have the opportunity to stand up, that is better. It makes a measurable difference. Lots of good juicy stuff happens when we stand. So first things first, do you know we get more oxygen in our lungs when we're standing versus sitting? Because most of us sit like this, right? Whereas when we're standing, we tend to stand a bit better. The other thing, our body language is more natural, whereas when we're sitting, we end up leaning a bit, we might do a bit of this and we end up doing a bit of this, and right, it makes a big difference. Even if we're not doing this, we end up doing, right, whew, if we can stand up to present, it does lots of good stuff. And even learners who didn't realize that one trainer was standing and another was sitting were saying, oh, I can't quite put my finger on it, but I learned more with that one, and that was the one that was standing. Now, if that's not an option for you, please, take that one and do with it what you will. It's just information. I don't know, let's tell everyone this. I spent 2 years in a wheelchair, and so I get what it's like to have to teach from a sitting position and not have the option to stand. So if that's a restriction you have, please don't feel like I'm giving you any grief on that. But if you have the opportunity to stand, it does do good things. Next, be yourself. Don't try and be somebody else. Don't be all newsreadery. Just be yourself. And remember, if you are recording a video and you stumble a word, please don't think you have to re-record it. I do not believe in video editing. I believe in one-take wonders, and so do learners. They don't want us just reading a script out to them either. And I know you've been in a session where you've gone in and the trainer or the presenter is there going, hi, welcome to today's class. I am so glad you're here. Oh, right? You want to reach through and you want to grab the script and say, if you're just going to read the PowerPoint slides, leave me alone. I can read them myself. If you're just going to read something out for me, just send me the document. I will read it myself. Reading from a script, learners get bored, they get frustrated, and trust scores. So that's something I measure a lot. Trust scores go down. But as the trainer, it is hard to stay animated if you are reading out a script, right? Because you won't be able to help it. You'll end up doing a bit of this stuff, right? And you end up looking down at your note. Oh yeah, it's horrible. All those things affect the learning experience. So we are trainers. We're not newsreaders. Learners want us to be professional, but not over-polished. And if we were in an on-campus classroom right now, would you have a word-for-word script? So why do we think we need to do that just because now we're standing in front of a camera, right? We absolutely must use that brilliant PowerPoint feature of the speaker notes, our dot points. Absolutely keep us on track. What on earth is it that I'm supposed to be saying while I'm on this slide? You need those dot points. But there's a few tricks with that. Oh, you're going to love it. All right, you're about to see all the cute tricks that I've got going on right now on my screen. So first things first, when you pop your PowerPoint into presenter mode, your view looks like this. Learners are obviously seeing the slide, but you're seeing this. So you're seeing a big image of that slide, and then you're seeing this nice skinny bit of your talking points. That is not what we want to see. We don't need to see our slides. We need to see our talking points. So you want to grab your mouse, you want to grab that line there and drag it left, because you don't need a big slide, you need talking points. Okay, so now what's happened is your presenter views here, your slides there, you can still check you're on the right side, but it's all about your speaker notes, but they're now really wide. So you're going to find yourself doing this. This is the next little trick. You want to minimize your screen. So you want that presenter view narrow. This is a really important trick, right? And it's narrow right up there. You're no longer doing this. Your speaker notes are right there. So you're making eye contact with the camera because you're dragging that minimized view right underneath the camera. Oh, can't believe you're getting to see all my tricks. Now, you're in a live session like I am right now. Guess what else is on my screen? I have the participant list there, so I can see that. I have the chat box there. I can see that. I also have a big clock, so I can keep track of time because I like to know that I'm on time. All right. Now, looking in on that presenter section of PowerPoint, I've just put a bigger version up here because I want to show you a few other tricks. Right? Because you don't want to read stuff out like a monotone newsreader. You want your dot points. Here's a few other tricks. This is actually an excerpt from my notes section from the slide earlier. So, I do not memorize all the animations, right? I just click my mouse when I need something to happen on my slide. How do I know something needs to happen on my slide? Because I've put myself a little arrow there. That's my cheeky little personal thing I do. If I see that arrow in my dot points here, it's like, oh, I need to click my mouse here as I say this point. I have dozens and dozens of webinars prepared. I prepared this webinar over Christmas. I'm not going to remember 2 months later where all my animations are. No, that little arrow tells me that I'm supposed to click my mouse now. The other thing you'll see in presenter notes are these square brackets. I use those as an instruction to myself. So I was presenting a webinar yesterday, and in the square brackets it said, "Oh, tell that Sarah story." I know the story really well. I don't need it written out in front of me, but it reminds me, oh, this is where that fits really well. Here, I might say, okay, let's sit and talk about this now, right? So that's something I can do. And live online, how is it that I can run a 60, 90, 2-hour webinar and finish to the minute on time? Because in my speaker notes, I have little square brackets telling me exactly where I need to be at this point in time. And by the way, we are 1 minute ahead of time right now, right? So that time check. These are little details. Now, these are super fussy details. But if you present to big groups like I often do, and I'm presenting every day, these are the things that just make it easier as well. You don't have to go to this level of detail, but I thought you'd want to see what's happening behind the scenes here. The other thing a lot of trainers are forgetting to do when we sit and design PowerPoints is we forget to incorporate pause moments. Right? We forget, especially in video content, to pause, or in a live class, to pause. So get learners to think about this thing that you've just shared. Give them the moment to digest. That's what the polls are about today. One, they're to keep you hooked in, keep you engaged, but also to get you to stop and think, because you'll be sitting there going, oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, now we're going to do a poll so you can really think about it, really bed that in. Pause moments matter. So we need to incorporate that into our slide design as well. And yes, even in a video, you can say to a learner, so what do you think? What are your experiences? You can ask questions, right? Doesn't mean they're going to answer you because it's a pre-recorded video, but you can do that. You can even say, things like, right, what you're going to do now is, right? That's really helpful. Note taking, whether you're presenting live or in a recorded video, it's really helpful if you can offer the notes to the learners. So if you can provide notes, that's really helpful, because what happens is when you provide the notes, especially if you have the opportunity to do that ahead of time or right at the start of a session, learners can then focus on listening and absorbing, because that dictation part of note taking is being done. And then their note taking is all about shaping and narrating, right? So it's good practice then to even help your learners shape those notes. So with our adult learners, we need to give them the triggers to then say, right, I'm going to give you time with your note taking now. And here's a trigger, here's a prompt, here's something that will actually help you shape your notes and develop that understanding. Now, you've learned from research that I've shared today that this is obviously the best practice video feed format. You're present with your content. Your learners are seeing your face, they're seeing your body language, you have a connection to that content. But as I said, not everyone's got this technology. So for our final practical tip, I'm going to show you a low-tech workaround. So imagine you've built your slide deck, it's full of content, but because this is the technology you're working with, you're in Zoom or Teams, this is how you're coming through. So you're probably sharing your screen for those slides to come up like that. So one of the best things you can do is at the very start of your session, don't do slide sharing straight away. Start your session full screen on camera. And then go share your screen, do some slides, and then when you say, now let's discuss, stop the screen sharing and discuss. And what happens is learners now perceive, because they're actually getting to see you more, that it's easier to engage with you. So that's a nice little low-tech tip, is just turn that screen sharing off from time to time so that learners get to experience you, your whole fabulous face. So back to the polls, and we're going to have some discussion time shortly. What are you loving? So out of all those tips, what was your favorite? What was your favorite? Now, this is a different poll. It's not a multiple choice question. It's one where you can just tap and click on the screen to agree. So you just click on the thumbs up. And if you don't like all the answers I've given there, you're welcome to type your own as well. So I'll give you a minute with that. And we also have a minute here that I'm going to check on that Q&A. I'm going to check on the chat box as well. Another sneaky behind the scenes tip. While there's a poll going on, you can hydrate. It's a nice tip as well. Okay, lots of you are loving the PowerPoint notes setup. I'm so pleased. The just be human. Learners want professional, not polished. Very important difference there. Lighting up your face. Fab. Good. Excellent. Oh, you like the photo of the people. All of it. That makes me happy. The photo of the people behind the camera, it works a treat. Unless you're married to my husband, who thinks it's hilarious to change out that photo for other ones. He and his colleagues have, I don't know how much time they spend creating those photos, but I often come into my studio and, oh, hello. They've had fun with the photo behind my camera. So good. I'm glad that you've really enjoyed those practical tips there. Thank you so much. And over here in the chat, that you really, that connection. I can see there's a question in the Q&A as well. What did the research I did have to say about personal presentation standards? So makeup versus natural business. Oh, thank you so much for that question, Kate. That's actually a really, really good question. So we did look at that, and we looked at, things like, do glasses matter? And thankfully they don't, because contacts kill me. So yeah, learners, again, professional, not polished. So learners did bring us examples of trainers who'd been out mowing the lawn and then sat in front of the camera dripping in sweat and in a bintang singlet. So we genuinely saw those examples. Yeah, not so good. Do you need to sit in the makeup chair for an hour? Definitely not. So learners need just professional, like you would in a classroom. Doesn't have to be polished. I am wearing makeup today, but it's not essential. I hate and loathe makeup, and we did test makeup, no makeup. Learners didn't even notice whether their trainers had makeup on, but they did notice just the basics. Do they just look professional, right? And so I hope that's answering your question there, Kate, as well. So, and as for dress code, because I see you're asking about dress code, we learned that it needs to be what's appropriate to the thing being taught. So we had a trade teacher who happened to be a woman, whacking her in a nice dress. That's just weird, right? So she needed to dress appropriate to the thing she was teaching. Healthcare, we often it's not unusual for the trainers to be in scrubs if they're on the ward, as well as they're in prac components. We also, what are some other examples we did test? Oh, one of the ones we saw was the TAE. We were looking at that, and the trainers there needed to look like trainers. So just so long as the dress is appropriate for the thing you're teaching. But yeah, we did see examples of bintang t-shirts, and no, that wasn't okay. So I hope that's answered your question, Fabo. Yes, glad that you're liking it. I won't read out all these hundreds of comments in here, but I'm so glad that you're enjoying the content here and that it is resonating with things that you already perceived and knew as well. And over here, the winning result here of your favorite tip so far was the PowerPoint notes, all those tips. I'm so glad that you're sharing that you liked that with me, because I wasn't sure if that's sort of like, I didn't know, is it everybody already doing that? Are they going to think I'm insane for sharing that? So I'm really glad that you found that useful. All right, we have, we've got 20 minutes left in our session. Isn't that great? We are going to have loads of time for questions at the end. But I thought I'd use the next 10 or so minutes to talk about green screen. So that if you're interested, what is this actual thing that, what does it look like? How does it work? So stick with me for a few minutes. As I said, we will have open questions after that as well. So the first thing to understand is there's no screen sharing happening here ever. So these platforms, Zoom and Teams, it doesn't matter what platform you're in, there are no special settings in those platforms because all the fancy footwork is happening at my computer with the software at my end. And so that enables me to be in complete control of what you see. So if I hang up from this call and jump into this afternoon, I've got a session in Blackboard, it's no biggie. There's no special settings I need to think about there. And as you've seen, I can move from this to this, right? These are all just scenes that I've set up, and it's really seamless. So when you're creating videos as well, it means you're creating videos with no video editing whatsoever. And I find that that's a really important point. So over the weekend, I was making some videos, and in just like a normal PowerPoint deck, I'd inserted some videos in there. And again, so I've actually got interviews with people and all sorts of things, and there's no video editing needing because I'm just standing up and pressing record. It makes life really, really efficient. So how does it actually work? So what's happening here is I'm using some software that I'll give you the name of it in a second. But what that software is doing is it's taking my webcam. So yeah, there is a normal webcam just in front of me. That software then chroma keys, that's the word, chroma keys out the green screen of the wall that's behind me. So there is literally a green screen on the wall behind me, and the software is saying anything green, I'm going to delete. And then it layers back in the other stuff. These are called sources. So the sources that are then layered back in are my PowerPoint slides. This is just a JPEG image, my logo over there in the corner. These are sources. You can layer in whatever you like, and then the software then says, oh, and then I'm going to send that back out as a cohesive image. So those platforms, Zoom and Teams and Blackboard and things, they're seeing a webcam. They're not really, they're seeing my software, but they think it's a webcam. That's why there's no special settings. People ask me, oh, does this mean I can't have green on my slides? You can have green on your slides. That's why I put that there, because that gets layered in after that green has been deleted, if that makes sense. So that's why I thought I'd show it to you like that. The software I use is completely free. I don't mean free for a trial or free for a hot minute. No. It's open source software. It is completely free. It was built by gamers for gaming. It just happens to be really good at doing this. It's actually not hard to use, but the initial setup is pretty tricky. You have to be very, very methodical. It takes about between 4 and 6 hours when you set this up for the very first time. But once it's set up, that's it, you're done. Literally anytime you want to use it, whether it's to host a live session like I am now, or you want to record a video, you literally just stand up and open the software and you are good to go. That's it. Well, you've got to open your PowerPoint as well. That's it. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but honestly, when I've coached people through it, 20 minutes, they've got it. Like, they've just got to get used to it, but it's really quick. There are some other alternative softwares out there that are paid for. Investigate them, go for it. This is the one I personally use. It is completely free, but as I said, there are some tricks to getting it set up. So that's why I wrote a 100-page guide, complete with hundreds and hundreds of screenshots showing people exactly how to do it. So if you're interested, if you go, wait, what does this thing look like? This is a screen grab. So whether you're live online or you're recording a video, this is what OBS, the software, looks like. So over on the left, you've got a little box that's called your scenes. So a scene is this, right? So you just tell it all your different scenes, you just set them up. Then that second box there are the sources within the scene. So the sources are like the furniture in a room. So the sources are, like I said, this little JPEG behind me, my PowerPoint slides, my logo over there. Those are your sources. Your next box, that's your microphone. So you can do audio mixes and things if you want to. I just have one microphone in mine. That's an old screenshot. It used to pick up, oh, there's a microphone on your camera and there's a microphone on your computer. It would pick all those up that I'd have to turn off. But now I've managed to teach it that no, there's just one microphone. And then here is where you hit start and stop recording, or you hit virtual camera if you're going live online. So that then those other platforms see this is just a camera. You don't have to touch anything. You literally just open up your PowerPoint and away you go. So what it means, you do literally have to have a green screen hanging on the wall behind you. There are a few different options of doing that. You do need to have 3 lights. You need a light there, right? So lighting up your face, and then you need a light there, and you need a light there. I won't go into more detail than that because I'll bore the people who aren't interested in that. But the lighting is a really important part. Otherwise, the software can't do a good job with chroma keying out that green. So the lighting is really important. Ideally, you also have 3 computer monitors. You can use 2. You can't use less than that. It doesn't work. But 3, 3 is where life is easy. So I recommend on one monitor, that's where you have the software. By having it there, you can just do a cheeky little glance over and go, yep, preview's looking good. You need another monitor, which is the stuff that your learners are going to see. So this is your PowerPoint. It's my polling is all sitting on that second monitor. So the stuff that's there, that's going to get zoomed out into the world. And then I like to have a third screen, I highly recommend, which is my presenter notes and those Zoom controls that I showed you before. And that way it's all nice and easy. You can get away with 2 screens. Can't get away with less than that. The best trick of all is how I change scenes, because honestly, these eyes are very old and tired. I can't see the teeny tiny font on that screen all the way over there to change scenes in OBS. So I have a little Stream Deck. It's about this big. It sits down here, and that's a programmable hotkeys. It's not fancy. It's just literally you just program those little buttons, and you say, when I press that button, please do this, and that's it. It's really easy. You need a microphone. Okay, so you don't want to ruin the effect by having earbuds out your ears and a microphone. You want a microphone just here, and you want to make sure that's out of shot. We found that when learners can see the microphone, they find it distracting and it kind of loses its magic a little bit. This doesn't have to be expensive. And you need a camera. Doesn't have to be expensive. I've had more than 900 people send me a video clip going, yay, I've set it up, and oh my God, this is so easy. So it's super easy to do if it is something that you're interested in doing. And my little speaker notes tell me we are exactly 1 minute ahead of time. Love it when I finish on time. Makes me so relaxed. We now have time for questions. I can see some are already coming in. And I have set up a poll in the background. So if you want to ask your question anonymously, there's a poll in the background. I'm going to keep an eye on that as well. Give me 2 seconds just to have a quick drink. Alrighty. So thank you so much for the lovely feedback that's coming in over in the chat as well. Again, I won't read out all those messages, Paul. I think we've had a few hundred messages come in today, which is fabulous. Lots of people are asking about that guide that I mentioned. In those notes, the downloadable notes for today's session, there are details on how to get access to that guide as well. So that's not something that we're just automatically sending out to everybody. The notes for today's session are going out for everybody, and in there are details of how you can get hold of that guide as well. All right. Questions coming in. Thank you for this. We've got one in the Q&A. Can you use this method to engage students other than chat and Q&A? Yeah. So verbal discussions, small group presentations, you will find that you will use this format for everything. So even just team meetings and meetings with learners and things like that, you use it with everything. So even that small group discussion, yes, this format does perform the best because again, it just feels natural, doesn't it? It just feels great. So thank you, Joan, for that question. Donna's asking for links to my research. Donna, if you go to teachingonline.com.au, you will see there's a little button at the top called free resources, and all my publications are under there as well. Please don't tell those academic journals that I've put the PDFs there because I will get in huge trouble. They are meant to sit behind a paywall, which I don't believe in. Don't get me started. So you can access my research there. Just don't tell the journals that I'm being naughty and doing that. Some questions over here in the polling as well. Thank you for that. built-in or separate webcam. I recommend a separate webcam. They're better quality than the ones you'll have built into your laptop. And also with the separate webcam, you can pop it where you need it to be. So built-in webcams, we haven't seen performing great, but if it's all you've got access to, make it work. But I would recommend getting a separate webcam if you can. Another person saying, do you need a separate camera or use the camera on your computer? I think I've answered that. Again, about that guide, the details are in the notes from today's sessions. All right, can you add the option for audience to turn the camera on for live Q&A? So normally, that decision about whether the audience can turn their camera on or not, that's done in the Zoom setup or the Teams setup when the meeting is first set up. Because we have 300 people in this session today, Paul has very rightly turned all those cameras off because of it's just going to destroy data and be very distracting. So that's not something that I control with that OBS software. That's something that's sitting in those Zoom and Teams control. But yes, when we're in a much smaller session than this, then absolutely have those cameras on for those group discussions. You can. That polling, oh, it's super easy to set up and use. Oh my goodness, it doesn't get any easier. And the variety of polls in there is one of the best out there. And again, it's another research project we ran, what polling tools do learners like? They really liked that one. Internet access and speed. Great question. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, you do need to be able, if you're streaming live, you need a very good internet connection with really good upload speeds. So my camera will go out in 4K, but I've told it not to because that will destroy everybody's internet. And I've told that software to compress it to go out. So it's still crisp, but not 4K crisp. But I do still need a very robust and high-speed internet connection to stream live. But if you're recording videos and just uploading them, then your internet speed won't be affected by what we've got going on here. Great question, though. I'm so glad you asked it. Okay, I think I'm bouncing between the poll and the Q&A and the chat. I think oh gosh, 60 unread messages. Paul, I'm going to get you to scan the chat. I'm going to check the Q&A. I'm going to get you to scan the chat because make sure I'm not missing questions there. Oh, can a hacker attack this mode of teaching? Yeah, of course they can. Hackers can attack anything. We've never ever had that experience, but those connection protocols sit within your firewalls at your organizational level. This software does not make changes. Now, I have helped install this exact setup at large government institutions. I think you know who I'm talking about, around the country. They've actually had to get state level approval because it is open source software and it has successfully been passed at that parliamentary state level. So I'm not an IT expert, I'm not a cybersecurity expert. However, I can assure you that this software has been approved at that level for government provider. Yeah, because that's where we've installed it. So yeah. But of course, hackers can attack anything. They're not going to do it through this software. They're going to do it through your institutional firewalls. I think I'm getting all the questions. This is great. Paul, I feel like I'm juggling here. I'm just like, da-da-da-da-da-da.
You're doing great. All I'm seeing is just tons and tons of love for your incredible work there. So lots of thank yous and, great inspiration and those sorts of things there. I think we've addressed everything in the Q&A box.
Oh, I've missed two, I can see. So one, the make and model of my webcam, I'm using an Elgato Facecam Pro. Elgato Facecam Pro. I get no kickbacks from anybody for anything I recommend. I can assure you of that. Digital technological tools try and get to sponsor me to do things, and I can't take that money because it'll affect my research. So I get no benefit from recommending their products, but I do love the Elgato Facecam Pro, and of course it's an Elgato brand screen on the wall behind me. It just works really well together. So she is asking in the chat, is there a preferred software, Microsoft versus Apple? This software is happier with Microsoft. It isn't as happy with Mac, but then again, I'm not great with Mac. So My clients, I have clients who are using it on Mac and they're doing it okay, but I've never been able to help them with any problems. So this software does seem to sit a little bit better with Microsoft. Louise is asking, is this can be used for tutoring students? Oh, Louise, we've run experiments where we've offered tutoring times. Well, I'm just sitting there watching, but the trainers have offered tutoring times. Nothing. Nobody's, don't you hate it? You're like, I'm going to be online if anybody wants any help between 3 and 4, and nobody dials in until we change to this format that you're seeing today. Packed house. It drives people to the sessions, and those tutoring sessions, again, super friendly. You can even, I don't have one set up for you today to demo, but you can have an interactive one. Anything can come up beside you. I've got PowerPoint up beside me today. That's just a website. That could have been an interactive whiteboard for us today, right? Because we're just visiting a web page. You can do anything here. So yeah, tutoring, heck yeah, absolutely. Thank you for everyone. Oh my goodness. I can't keep up with the chat, Paul. There was 61 unread messages I've gone through, and now there's 94 unread messages. I'm so sorry if I'm missing anybody. Please email me.